Raskin said in February, we will not certify a Trump victory.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of movement, I think, coming from the GOP, the RNC, so state level GOPs, and then the RNC coming to try to prevent election fraud, which we're obviously all very critical of. But there's a lot of interesting, I think, developments on the front, particularly of the overseas vote. Mainstream media is melting down that GOP, RNC committee members are suing over that. But I do think it is concerning to me that absentee ballot return rates in Detroit and Flint hitting 40 and 39% respectively. I think there's a new report out from the Government Accountability Institute saying that over 53 counties in Michigan have more registered voters than they do citizens. So the more that you see,
that's crazy.
Yeah, and the
How
government
does that work?
Peter Schweitzer's a great journalist. So I think when you see numbers like that, it sort of comes back to the question of, I wish it were a fair election, but it's more, I always call it ballot warfare than it is a free and fair vote.
That's a really good way of putting it, ballot warfare. I said this on the show. Yeah, I said that exact thing on the show yesterday, actually. I called it ballot warfare.
Yeah, she actually stole your quote.
No. I did a ballot warfare special edition of War Room many months ago.
I'm totally messing with you. I stole that from you. But at least I didn't steal an election, right? So what I was saying yesterday was, even if it looks like Trump is ahead, we got to get out there and we got to vote like every illegal alien is voting, like they're harvesting ballots, right? We need to just prepare for the absolute worst case scenario. It's got to be too big to rig. Well,
that's the most fascinating thing about this election, and that's what I've been talking to a lot of people about, is no one hasn't made up their mind who they like better. Maybe there's like 5 people in the entire country who are like, oh, I don't know, Kamala, Trump, I don't know. Which one would it be? So the entire effort is about getting people out to vote for your guy. That's what's been so amazing about like what Charlie Kirk is doing with Turning Point Action. Have you seen some of the footage of him going to these universities? He had like a 22
they're amazing.
Stop tour of universities this fall, colleges and universities. And if you'd been following his work, like the past couple of years, he goes out and there's a ton of protesters. Mm-hmm. Now he goes out and he convinces kids that they want to vote for Trump, and then they throw MAGA hats at everybody, and everyone's cheering for Trump.
That's right.
And they're like, wait, I want to buy a house. I don't want illegal immigrants taking my job.
To your point, exactly that. You used to see these big protests when they would do these college events. Now it's mostly young guys going like, Trump, and there's a very few dissidents arguing with him. Mm-hmm. And they're not very good at arguing with him.
They try, but they can't actually maintain a point because they don't have enough information.
But look, following the Kamala Harris bomb of an interview on Fox News, which no sane person thinks she did well. I mean, I'm sorry. Anybody who says she did well, Mark Cuban is lying.
I don't get it. What is going on with him?
The thing is, like, you could say, like, if you were pro-Kamala, you could say that Brett Baier was harassing her. We were
but he wasn't.
I don't agree with it, but we were joking about it before the show. That's what people are saying. People are like, oh, he was in her face and he was rude and all of this stuff, and she came off
but
right
you said
after
you
the
could
interview.
Say that.
You could say that.
You can't say that.
People have been saying it's a victory for her.
Of course they are, but there's no basis for saying that. Brett Baier's first question was, how many illegal immigrants do you think your administration has released into this country since it began? That's a straightforward, basic question. None of these are gotchas, and I'll explain. A gotcha is when, if Brett Baier said, you've said that Donald Trump is unstable, and she goes, yes, he is. Do you think that if a president is showing these behaviors of instability or mental decline, the 25th Amendment should be invoked to remove them? And she goes, absolutely. And then he goes, like Joe Biden, when you noticed he was in mental decline. Why didn't you? That's how you gotcha. He didn't do any of that.
No, I agree with you on that, because that was
her record sucks.
Yeah, her record sucks, so it's a gotcha. Right. But like, I agree with you on that, because I really wanted him to press her not on the questions that he wanted to ask, but on the answers she was giving. Right. Like when he said, what would you turn the page on? And she basically said rhetoric and mean tweets.
Which is hilarious.
It's like, how about you press on that, Brett? Like, what is she talking about? What last 10 years? She's been in office for 3.5. Trump's been out of office. She's complaining that he's been running this whole time. But that's because Biden and Kamala Harris suck. You know what I mean? Like, press her on her answers, and instead he was really married to what he wanted to ask instead of what she was saying.
I think that's totally fair. I think he also probably knew that he wasn't going to have that much time with her, and so he wanted to get to a number of different questions. There were a few issues, but overall, I think he did a pretty good job. Again, I also would have appreciated it if he pressed her more, but it's easy for me to Monday morning quarterback him when he was sitting across from the vice president.
I don't think
will
so.
say this.
I mean, you do interviews. You know how to do an interview.
I've never interviewed Kamala Harris.
No, but
I don't think I could talk to her. My ears would be like Trump's ears. They'd be covered in bandages after I spoke to that woman for a half hour.
Well, she is hard to listen to.
Yeah, she's very hard to listen to. I just want to make this one point about the interview. One of the issues is that Kamala, she hasn't figured out how to brand herself. They're going back and forth between the adults are back in charge and I'm anti-establishment and I'm going to change things. Biden was really clearly the establishment candidate. He was proud of that. They discussed him in those terms. She's trying to discuss this as if she's an anti-establishment candidate, but she's from the current administration. And one final note I'll add is all the people who are saying she looked good in this interview think that men can get pregnant. So their opinions don't really matter. They're not in contact with reality. All that matters is the agenda.
Dealing with.
The counter
That's what we're dealing with.
From MSNBC was that people were saying that Kamala looked angry. They were saying it was because Americans can't handle a strong black woman because, of course, that was their initial commentary after.
Also, we're all
aired.
sexist, Natalie.
And
you forgot
of course,
that part.
but you know they're desperate. They also wheeled out Rachel Maddow last night to drop another, as she described, bombshell drop on President Trump, having to do with trying to negotiate, I think it was like $20,000 off of Stormy Daniels' legal bills in exchange for an NDA. That was their big scoop. But I will say it is interesting.
Well, that convinced me.
Right? I know.
I think Kamala did win that debate now.
Yeah. It is interesting to me, though, if you read, the Jack Smith filing, and I think sort of the big narrative on how they are setting up, or at least kind of making us think that President Trump is going to, steal the 2024 election. This concept of a red mirage, right, turning into a blue wave. They say that a lot of the way, again, this is like MSNBC talking, but that President Trump is trying to create the illusion of success is that, we're surging in the polls, we're doing so well, which I do think is accurate and true. But it is funny to me when I see left-wing media outlets carry that narrative, because they're sort of in some ways helping the Trump campaign from their perspective of being able to give the Trump campaign ground to say that if there is a red mirage, right, where they're ahead on election night, but then it flips because of the, mass amounts of mail-in ballots that always seem to cut one way with a weird statistical anomaly only for Democrats. That's why, to me, I get weirded out when I see, like, for instance, Politico yesterday running that long profile piece about how the Harris campaign is in shambles in Pennsylvania, because I don't think Democrats typically project weakness, especially in the context of leaning into Trump's abilities to, as they would say, claim election fraud.
I think Kamala Harris even going for this Fox News interview speaks to the flailing of the campaign. I think this is a desperate attempt by some in the Kamala Harris campaign to reach out to Republicans, but I don't think this is an effective way of doing it. She also held a rally on this same day in Pennsylvania where she had many former Republican congressmen come and endorse her. It was including Adam Kinzinger, Lauren Comstock, former Republicans. But I don't think this is going to be effective for her campaign at all with this Republican outreach. As far as the spin that we're seeing from the left with this Brett Baier interview, I'm reading a headline from the New York Times. It says, Kamala Harris arrived for a Fox interview. She got a debate. That has to be the spin. But from any other perspective, any interview that Donald Trump sits down for is at least this antagonistic, and he would get the interviewee would get praised for being so harsh on Trump.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.